Hello everybody, welcome back to Planet X News. It is October 7th, 2017. And ladies and gentlemen, we have made another Planet X discovery once again near the sun. Now, I have the current SDO 48-hour loop up on the screen right now. And listen, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of solar scientists and scientists from NASA, they are claiming that our sun has entered into what they refer to as the grand solar minimum. Hence the word minimum, meaning the sun's activity is at a minimum, but we have seen plenty of activity on the sun. X-flares, coronal mass ejections, massive filament releases. And once again, we're seeing the same thing. Now, over the course of the last couple of months, Dr. Albers and I, we have been trying to put together this cycle. And the cycle that I'm referring to is the rotational path or the orbital path of this object that we're referring to as Planet X, because I've discovered it yet again, and we'll get to those photographs at the end of this video. As I have stated before, ladies and gentlemen, our biggest threat will come from the sun. It will not be a planet crashing into Earth, okay? That's just not going to happen. But the interaction of this object with the sun is what is causing all of this turbulence on our star. Now, as you can see, massive filament releases, and there have already been several coronal mass ejections going back on October 4th through the 5th, once again on the 6th, and again today. And I'm going to show you those. Now, I've captured this object once again, and the positioning where I am capturing this object and the timing on the calendar, it seems to be in a set pattern that whenever this object is at a certain point, we are seeing all of these major disruptions on the star, our star, the sun. Now, going back to August and September, we had massive X-flares that actually stunned the scientific community. Well, if you remember the dates of those massive explosions on the sun, they were in the beginning of the month. I also discovered, once again, this object near the sun. And I mean very, very close, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, it is very close. It is so close that it actually gets enveloped in the sun's corona. And once again, that is exactly where I found it this morning. This turbulence that is being created on the sun. Now, folks, don't get me wrong. The sun will always be active. It's a star. But if we were going to be, for instance, in the wrong place at the wrong time with one of these X-flares, we're going to be in serious trouble. The sun has very, very powerful magnetic fields. So does Planet X. So I'm going to get directly into some of this other information. Now, what you're looking at here is the cactus coronagraph. And this is for today, October 7th. And as you can see, once again, another coronal mass ejection. Not too much was reported about this CME. But as all of you know, I follow all of this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I literally have 5 computers in operation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, recording all of this information. so we have access to it. We can go back, we can check it before information is deleted. And once again, folks, I have found many hours of deleted footage on the SDO, also on the coronagraphs for SOHO, also on the stereo coronagraphs. I'm finding deleted footage constantly, and now it's almost on a daily basis. 3, 4, 5, 6 hours missing. And it's usually about a 6-hour increment that this time is disappearing. When this time is disappearing, there's an event. And the event, well, that's what they don't want us to see. But fortunately, like I said, I have many computers going, constantly monitoring the situation. Now, here is the SOHO coronagraph, the C2. And what you see passing in the upper right-hand corner is the planet Mercury, making its transition around the sun. But here you see, folks, today, the coronal mass ejection. And it started actually yesterday, and it was a pretty good explosion. It actually went all the way from the 6th into today. And again, very little reporting on it, but we are already seeing the effects of what is happening. Here is the current earthquake map that I use, and as you can see, all of the big red circles, these are earthquakes that have occurred within the past hour. Something that's kind of strange. It said 58 minutes ago, magnitude 3.5, 65 kilometers east-southeast of Lakeview, Oregon. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this earthquake wasn't in Oregon. It was actually in the northern corner of Nevada. Right there. 13.8 kilometers deep. So I don't know why they just wouldn't say the earthquake happened in Nevada. But as you can see, there is plenty of earthquake activity. A lot of it. Utah, magnitude 3.09. A lot of activity along the San Andreas Fault. Once again, in California. 29 minutes ago, they had pretty close to a magnitude 3. You can see the activity. Mexico, once again, taking a beating along their west coast. Magnitude 4.7, almost 60 kilometers deep. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are not going to see an end to the earthquake activity. If anything, as I've been charting, over the past 3 months, the earthquake activity has actually increased in its magnitude. So these smaller quakes that we're registering as a magnitude 3, 3.2, 3.5, well, they've raised to a magnitude 4, 4.5, and some of them even in the magnitude 5 and above. And we're clearly seeing that. Now, 16 hours ago in Ecuador, magnitude 5.1. 147 kilometers deep, that's pretty deep. Down here in Chile, magnitude 4.1, kind of shallow. But once we move over here to New Zealand, they're starting to see some activity. Magnitude 4.9, 4.6 in Fiji, and over here in Tonga. And these were deep, 195 kilometers deep. Those deep earthquakes, folks, when you see them happening over here in the deep South Pacific, all of this energy is going to reverberate straight across the Pacific Ocean, impacting the west coast of Mexico, Central America, and South America. So probably within the next 48 hours, you're going to see more activity right along the western coast of South America, and once again, right over here in Mexico and Central America. Now, ladies and gentlemen, they are getting battered with very severe storms, landslides, flooding in Central America. It is an absolute disaster And nobody's reporting on it on mainstream media. These people, well, I'll just say it, they are being forgotten. And it is an absolute tragedy what is occurring in Central America. And people are losing their lives on a minute-by-minute basis. There's a lot of activity brewing up here also in Alaska. We'll go ahead and zoom in up here, and you can see a pretty big swarm. This is usually the area where these earthquakes occur in this region. We're going to zoom in a little closer and see what this actual bigger quake was here. I can't seem to get on it. Magnitude 4.2, again, very shallow, only 14.9 kilometers deep. So we can clearly see the earthquake activity is brewing. 31 minutes ago, magnitude 4.7 over in Japan. This is very, very close to the Fukushima area. I mean, the last thing we need, folks, is something horribly earthquake-related happening in Japan, anywhere near this Fukushima reactor. But what I want to get into now is the discovery that I made. Let's go ahead and exit out of here. And this is on the coronagraph, the cactus coronagraph. And this was dated for the 6th, yesterday, during the coronal mass ejection. I noticed something very, very odd. And these coronal mass ejections, sometimes they just light up these objects. And very, very clearly, once again, caught in the coronal mass ejection, you see our object. Now, it kind of looks like a big piece of it is missing, but it's not. Now, this is just all of the ejecti coming from the sun as this coronal mass ejection occurred. But, again, folks, I mean, it's clear as a bell. You're not going to see a big round spherical ball in the center of a coronal mass ejection. It is an explosion. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the other photographs that I captured. This was just the same photograph with a different filter to give you a little bit more depth and allow you to see this object. And ladies and gentlemen, this object, it is definitely rotating with the sun. Now, the calculations that I've been trying to make, it seems that this object is possibly a few days ahead of the sun in its rotation. So it is actually rotating and orbiting around the sun. I believe it's in a 25-day rotational pattern. The sun is about 28 days. And the orbital pattern, it's kind of elliptical because I'm seeing the object in different areas. And we're going to see in the next pictures, you're going to see the object right up here next to the sun. Now, there is a big possibility that there's more than one object, and you can guarantee there probably is. With an object like that, it probably has smaller moons or even smaller brown dwarfs rotating and orbiting around it. Now, this was another phase of this coronal mass ejection, and this was actually 4 hours later. And when I was looking at this, zooming into it, I saw some distortions, and one of them was pretty clear, a spherical body right here. But again, folks, that's kind of unclear, so I don't know exactly what that might be, but it looks a little suspicious. I thought I'd show it to you. You could make your own mind up on what you think that is, but it is a spherical object. There's no doubt about it. Now, this is the original, the black and white. And again, when you're looking at this, you can clearly see this spherical object stands out. You can catch it with your eye very quickly. And you can see it right there. Now, this is almost 4.5 hours later. The object that I just showed you in the previous photo, that could be this object, but at a further distance away. So it might be traveling a little further away from the sun, and then it comes back in. Again, folks, it's very, very hard to try and judge the orbital path and the timing of this object. But I feel as it comes in close to the sun, this is the time period that we see these large coronal mass ejections, these X flares, these massive filament releases. I was watching some filament releases earlier this morning, and ladies and gentlemen, they had to be hundreds of thousands of miles long, stretching out into space from the sun. Huge filament releases. And again, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget the big time solar scientists and everybody over there at NASA. They claim that we have entered the grand solar minimum, where the sun's activity should be much, much lower. But we're seeing the complete opposite. We're seeing the sun's activity in relation to filament releases, plasma loops, plasma ejections, coronal mass ejections, X flares. Everything is on the rise. But you will have people telling you the complete opposite. The complete opposite. And that disinformation is horrible, because that's not happening. The sun is producing a massive amount of activity on a daily basis. Now, what I found is during the end of this cycle with Planet X, the sun calms down. I believe that this is the point when Planet X is the furthest away from the sun, but then in its own cycle, as it moves closer back towards the sun, once again, we see all of this increased activity. And where are we? We are in the beginning of the month. When are we having these X flares and these coronal mass ejections? We're having them in the first 2 weeks of every month. I've done my homework. This is the pattern that I see evolving, clear as a bell. So here we are on the 6th and 7th of October, and we've had several coronal mass ejections. The sun is going absolutely haywire as we speak. Once again, earthquake activity is swarming around the entire planet, everywhere. Now, getting into this photograph. I snapped this photograph on October 4th. As you can see right down here in the lower left-hand corner. This is a composite image of 3 different angstroms, the 211, 193, and the 171. Now, in the few minutes that you were sitting here listening to me talking about the sun, I'm just wondering if you were able to pick out and find the object in this photograph. If you haven't, well, let's just zoom in and I'll show you. Here it is, right here. Right there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, once again, we're finding this object very, very close to the sun. Sometimes it is hard to see because it gets enveloped in the sun's corona. As this object moves closer to the sun in its orbital pattern, we start to see a lot of activity. The sun's corona increases. It actually gets brighter. It moves further away from the sun. And there's the object right there. And it's pretty massive. Our calculations is this object is definitely much, much larger than the planet Jupiter. Much larger. In order for it to get this close to the sun, it has to be a star, not a planet. So this is the original photograph that I was looking at. And, you know, my eyes are so trained now that I can spot these objects very, very quickly. And again, I have 5 computers going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, recording all of this information constantly. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the only way to do it, because they'll take down the information, they'll hide the information, they'll censor the information, they'll delete time footage, and they'll hide it. Why? Because they don't want you to know. They don't want you to see it. They don't want you to understand it. Because if you understand it, then you're gaining knowledge on what is truly actually happening. So we'll go ahead and move further. I put these photographs, the same photograph, through different filters. That's it. That's all that I had to do. And once again, here you go. Staring you right in the face. Now, I've caught this object just about on all 4 corners of the sun. I've captured it here. I've captured it up here. I've captured it down here. I've captured it over here. And we've also seen a smaller object orbiting right around the equator of the sun. You've seen that in my past videos going back to the beginning of September. So there's no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, there is more than one of these objects. Where they came from, how they got here, what are they doing here? Again, a lot of big questions that we have. And that's why we continue investigating and researching. Let's move on to the next photograph. Again, this is just another filter change, and I'll zoom in for all of you. That's about as far as I could zoom it in. And these, I've converted all of these images to high definition, so you guys are able to see them much more clearly. Now, just let me give you a little tip for anybody viewing these videos in the very beginning. Your YouTube player that you watch videos on, go to the lower right hand corner, click on that little white gear and increase your resolution. All of my videos should be in 720 or 1080 resolution. So make sure you go up there and you set your resolution to the highest that your computer monitor will allow you. But there it is, folks. I mean, you can clearly see it right there. Now, that is not that's not a plasma loop. It's not a prominence. That is a perfect spherical object right there in the corner. We'll take a look at another photograph. Now, this was the actual original that I had picked up. Now, I wasn't able to pick this up from the SDO. I actually had to go over to the SETI website, and because I noticed that there was time missing on the SDO footage. When I see time missing, I know something is awry. So I immediately went and started looking for the missing footage. When I found the 6 hours of missing footage, bingo, that's what I find. Right there. So, ladies and gentlemen, when NASA is deleting 6 hours of footage, they just, I mean, they're painting a pretty bad picture for themselves because they're not doing that good of a job hiding it. But again, I have multiple computers recording this information constantly, non-stop. So that was the original that I caught. Now, this is one of the inverted photographs. Just wanted to make sure what I was looking at was actually there. Now, in this photograph, if you just take a look at this burnt orange color right here. Now, this is the sun's corona, and this is in the 304 angstrom. So the sun's corona is not going to show as this huge, bright, illuminated glow. It's going to be very, very close to the sun. You can see the object is slightly blocked, but you can see it right here. Same photograph, different angstrom of light, but there she be. Same photograph, nothing has changed. They're only going to be looking at one photograph, but in different filters. And there you go. And that object is pretty big. No doubt, folks. It's there. Moving on to one more filter. Again, it's the same photograph that you're going to be looking at. And here we are. Now, in this angstrom and this composite, you can see the sun's corona. You can see the object is slightly obscured by the corona of the sun. When you pan back, you can start to see it. It almost reminds you of looking at the moon from Earth whenever it's a full moon. Move to the next photograph. Again, same photograph, different filter. And again, this is a composite between the 211, 193, and the 171. And these are just different angstroms of light. And we could see it right there. This object is in some type of a pretty tight orbital pattern around the sun. I do believe that it moves away from the sun during the latter part of the month, but then in the beginning of the month it starts moving back in. As this object moves back in, that's when we start seeing the uptick in the earthquake activity. Here's another filtered view. I'll zoom in as much as I can. And you can clearly see, you could almost see some markings on it, but again, you know, that could be slightly distorted by the light and the activity on the sun, and also the corona being directly in front of this object. So that's why it's always going to look hazy. We're probably never going to get a really, really clear view of it because of the sun's corona. It's a big discovery, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, once again, it doesn't matter how many times we find this object. Finding it on a monthly basis is definitely proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that these objects exist. They are in an orbital pattern around the sun. They are affecting the sun, and the sun is therefore affecting our planet. Now, I'm going to move on to the next photograph. Again, just a different filter so we can get a different look at this object. Trying my damnedest to get a better and clearer view. But as you can see, yes, it's definitely not a coronal prominence of any kind. It's definitely not a plasma loop, because let me see, I think there is a plasma loop. Here's a plasma loop right here. Here's a plasma loop, folks. They're usually teardrop shaped. They're moving from one connection to another. Now, let's be honest. Does that look anything like this? Once again, same photograph, just a different filter. Zoom in here. This does give you a little bit better of an outline. And this is what I'm looking for, folks, whenever I'm using different filters and different programs to try and bring out more definition. That's why I place these photographs, and all of my videos now I'm using high definition and ultra high definition whenever I can. So once again, here she be, right there. And the timing of this object is very important. So from this point on the 7th of October, probably from this point and through the next 2 weeks, we are probably going to see much more earthquake activity, and the volcanic activity around the world, ladies and gentlemen, as a lot of you already know, has increased tenfold. There are massive eruptions going on right now in multiple locations around the world with massive volcanic eruptions. Will it get any better? To be quite honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's going to get worse. Let's take a zoom in look at this. And this does give us, once again, a little bit better definition. As we pan out, you can pick it out very, very quickly with your eye. Here's the plasma loop down here, lower left-hand corner. Here's our object. Here's our planet X, at least one of them. Now this is just in black and white. And there it is. I've had a lot of people sending me emails asking me, you know, when do I think this object is going to gain its breakaway speed? To be quite honest with you folks, many years ago, there were a few investigators who I'll leave nameless. They came out with some stories about how this system moves in and makes its way into our solar system, makes its way around the sun, gains breakaway speed, and then leaves. Well, folks, I don't believe that story. I've been investigating Planet X for a long, long time. I know what I'm looking at. I know what my evidence is telling me and showing me. I don't know if this object is ever going to make breakaway speed, as this one individual said. I think these objects have been here for quite some time. Close to the sun, probably over the last couple of years. As I've stated before, I believe that this object is in kind of a tug-of-war with the magnetic fields of the sun and Planet X. It's almost like they're kind of locked together, which is bad news. Really bad news. But if this object stays where it's at, we're always going to continually have this pattern of a lot of activity on the sun, therefore increasing the earthquake activity and volcanic activity and strange weather patterns, disruptions in our jet stream, the wobbling of our planet, because we're only 93 million miles away from the sun. The magnetic fields of this object and the sun, well, folks, they reach hundreds of millions of miles. So it definitely affects our planet. I'm not sure if I want this object to, as they say, gain breakaway speed and leave our solar system, because, folks, if that would happen and Earth would be in the wrong place at the wrong time, then the actual crustal pole shift that everybody talks about could and would happen in a very, very violent way. The Earth would not be able to withstand a close encounter with this object. It would not. If this object were to get any closer than it is now, we're in serious trouble. Big time. So I'm not sure if I want to see this object, as they say, gain breakaway speed. We just don't know. There are so many unknowns. That's why we continue to investigate and research every single day. Here's one more filter, clearly showing you this object. Now, Dr. Albers has done a lot of research in looking at this object and going into some theory that, you know, these objects, if it is a brown dwarf star, does it have the ability to rejuvenate? Well, scientists at Harvard and Cornell universities, they've done some studies, and their studies are proving that with a host star like ours and the close interaction of a brown dwarf, the brown dwarf can actually rejuvenate itself to an extent. Now, that would probably be even more harmful to all of us here on Earth, because as the star rejuvenates, its magnetic field will reach further. Now, we don't know precisely how far its magnetic field reaches now, but it's reaching far enough to create a very serious wobble in our planet. If you just take a look at the jet stream in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, you can easily see how this is affecting our planet. These weather patterns are going to continue. Things are going to get very, very strange. Massive flooding in the country of Norway, which is kind of unusual. I've been reading about it now for the past week. I saw some photographs that were sent in by one of my subscribers who lives in the area, and the water levels were almost to the top of street signs, which would have to be at least 7 feet underwater. Massive flooding going on worldwide, folks. A lot of it we don't know about because mainstream media, well, you know, they're too busy with Donald Trump. And now, with the situation brewing in Las Vegas, well, now we have our eyes on that. Could it be a diversionary plan to keep people's attention off of this? Hey, it's possible. We know that they do very, very evil things. Now, this is something new that the SECI website, which is run by the United States Navy, this is something new that they've actually come up with, and it's kind of almost like an embossing filter. And I looked at it for the first time today because, again, it's a new feature. It has just come up on their website, and I took a screenshot of this, and I was looking very, very closely at this type of filter that they use, And you can definitely see that object right there. I think what they're looking at whenever they change their filter over on this view, I don't know what they're actually trying to find, but it's pretty interesting. And when you see these openings, let me just show you here up close. When you see these flat blank openings right here, these are coronal holes, because I've matched them up with other views on the SDO. This is a coronal hole, and that is massive. That is a massive coronal hole. That is where all of the solar wind, all of the heavily charged particles spewing from the sun, and the Earth, well, it passes right through those heavily charged particles that are blasting our magnetopause, our magnetosphere, damaging it. These particles, they make it all the way to the core of this planet. Therefore, that internal heating is something that is creating and causing these earthquakes. It's almost like the tectonic plates of the Earth are being pulled apart. So the earthquake activity will continue. The volcanic activity will continue. The massive amounts of flooding worldwide will continue. Very strange weather patterns around the world will continue. And yes, you will see very odd things in the sky. Cloud patterns, iridescent clouds, the rainbow clouds. You're going to see a lot of different things in the sky. Ladies and gentlemen, keep on taking your photographs. Keep on documenting what is happening. Now, I took the filter from Secchi and that view, and I just put it through my own filter, and I wanted to see a little bit more definition. And as I zoomed in, well, bingo, you can see our perfectly spherical object in the background there. You can see the flat surface, as I'll just call it, of this coronal hole here and this coronal hole here. And this one was just Earth facing. It still is. We'll be heading through the solar wind stream of this coronal hole in the next 48 hours. I was checking it out on the solar wind model, and yeah, we're going to be heading right into that on the 8th and the 9th of this month. And folks, as I've stated before, I will say it again, these patterns are not going to end. They're not going to stop. It's actually going to get worse. There's no doubt about it. We will see very short lulls in activity. But pretty much, I would say, out of a calendar day of 30 days, 20 of those days, we are in jeopardy. So about two-thirds of the time, we're looking at a lot of activity on the sun, therefore affecting our planet in many, many ways. I'm very happy to share all of this information with all of you because, I mean, this is what I do. This is what my goal is. My goal is to show you beyond a shadow of a doubt that these objects exist. Planet X is real. There are more than just one of these objects, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think that this has anything to do with the planet Nibiru. These objects, they are not planets. They are stars of some kind, whether they are brown dwarfs, white dwarfs, it really doesn't matter, other than they are affecting the sun in a very violent way. And this is very detrimental to every single living creature on this planet. Another big discovery by Planet X News, once again. It's very startling to look at images like this. And then you have these sellout astronomers that say, oh, if I can't see it with my telescope, it doesn't exist. Well, ladies and gentlemen, when you're using a telescope, you're looking through a pinhole, and that's all that you see. They know it's there. They're not going to say anything about it. You're not going to hear any astronomer step up to the plate and show you concrete evidence, because they would fear for their life. There are days that I worry about that. But you know what? Showing each and every one of you this information, I think, is more important. Giving each and every one of you the ability to see with your own eyes what is actually there. There you go. Now, some of you may be scared, worried. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have time to be scared. You can worry, but we have to get ourselves in order. It is time for preparation in many ways. Whatever way you feel that you need to prepare, that's what you need to do. I've stated before, I don't have a definite timeline. It's my theory that these objects that are orbiting the sun, they may be here for whatever lifetime we have left. I don't know for sure. But I'll continue to plug away. Dr. Albers continues each and every day with her research. And both of us drive ourselves to the point of exhaustion each and every day, trying to make these discoveries. So we're probably going to be looking at some increased activity from this point, probably over the next 2 weeks. We'll see what happens. We'll see what it brings. But this is the newest discovery by Planet X News. Very interesting. To me, that's rock solid. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for watching, subscribing. I really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, share the videos with your friends and your family members on Facebook, on Twitter. And don't just share the video. Try giving a little explanation on what's happening. You'll start to awaken people. I see it happening now. That's a good thing. That's what we're here to do. This is Scott from Planet X News and the Nibiru channel, October 7th, 2017. Thank you for watching.